You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
Do you need a car? Been shopping only to be turned down because of bad credit, low credit, no credit, bankruptcy, or divorce? Guess what? Today's your lucky day, because now you can buy a car, truck, or SUV, just about any vehicle. It's true. Bad credit doesn't matter. No credit doesn't matter. Bankruptcy or divorce, it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, your job is your ticket to your new vehicle. We're Auto Credit Express, and we've helped thousands of people just like you. Antonio H. told us, great company, got me connected, and the day I went in, I drove off in the car I wanted. 100% worth your time. Need a car? Get started now and drive off as early as today. Just text FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911 right now to get started. That's FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911. Auto financing the easy way. Text FINANCE to 357-911.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
A purple mountain majesties over the fruited plain. But now wait a minute, talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee.
Oh, good evening, everybody. This is Liz Feld. Welcome to For Immediate Release. I am joined tonight once again by my spectacular co-host, Bill O'Reilly.
Hi, Liz.
Happy
Feeling
Columbus
very
Day to you. Are you on
Happy
Columbus Day?
And
And
I'm on Columbus Day.
And we're allowed to say Columbus Day here, aren't we?
We are. I insist on it.
I was actually looking before you went to air here to see what states don't acknowledge or recognize Columbus Day anymore, and there are quite a few. Some of them have other, alternative recognition or acknowledgement of the day on the second Monday of October. But it's interesting to see that this is it's certainly not a national holiday. That's for sure.
Isn't that crazy? I always wonder, Liz, that and with great respect for all the Native Americans in the nation, but there were other tribes that were here before they arrived, and they got knocked around too and pushed south. So you wonder, do we honor them? I mean, they're all in Peru now, but anyway, whatever it is, happy Columbus Day, happy Native American Day, and peace to everybody.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that is intriguing to me is that many states, and I guess it's also just employers individually, not just states, decide that, whether their employees can take off Veterans Day or Columbus Day as if they're interchangeable, which is remarkable. But so it goes.
Yeah, that seems crazy. I don't know how you could not take off Veterans Day. Like, give me a break.
I know.
How do you not take off Veterans Day? By the way, we're about to hit a really important centennial this year, and nobody, at least in where I'm from, is talking about it. We've got, November 11th will be the 100th anniversary of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month that was supposed to end all wars, and that was a pretty big deal. And it's certainly not being promoted very well. Maybe it'll all show up at the end on ABC in primetime, but I don't hear anyone talking about it, which I think is a shame.
It is. It's 100% agree with you. I was also just reading a reminder that by next year, a lot of the kids who are being born will, the war in Afghanistan has gone on for 17 years, almost 18 years, and they'll be born, and it's the longest war in history. It's remarkable. They will have been born after. I forgot what I was. What my point was.
No, right. That's crazy.
Yeah, it
Absolutely
is crazy.
Nuts.
It is nuts.
Yeah. I always think, I was born in 1963, so 18 years after the end of World War II. But I was thinking recently that, when I was a kid and when we were kids, the guys in their 50s and 60s were World War I veterans. And of course, there's none left. And it's just amazing that time marches on. It's just, kind of relentlessly. But to think those young Vietnam vets are now the old vets that, to the kids today, to the kids. Yeah.
Well, and I guess, my grandfather was World War I, as yours probably was. That was never talked about. And you and I have shared private stories and even spoken here on the show a bit about our dads in World War, being World War II servicemen. But World War I seems, talk about ancient history, it seems like it's far more than 100 years old. But anyway,
but it's so important. It's even worse.
Critically important.
My grandfather was actually Spanish-American War, which is crazy. He was born in 1867. But World War I, I mean, it had such an impact, and we weren't even planning to talk about this, but it had such an impact on the history up until today. You know, with the Russian Revolution and you know, following the war, the carving up of a lot of the Middle East. I mean, so many issues and problems and challenges that we've had in the last 100 years, you know, came from that war, and you know, its effect is still being felt. And you know, I don't think it's being taught more than, you know, for a few hours in high school now, which is a real shame.
Well, you know, now that you brought up about the 100th anniversary, I'm going to check and see. I'll do a little homework between now and next week to see what is going on in any of the schools around the country, because it really, that's where you can reach the most, you know, the number of young folks. But and certainly at the village level is flag ceremonies and the like. And we listen in Larchmont. We always did a wonderful Veterans Day ceremony, and it was always quite well attended. But I have not seen one thing so far about the 100th anniversary. That's for sure.
Yeah, isn't it just crazy? And by the way, there's a young guy in Pennsylvania, I believe, that someone told me about that I was hoping to have on the show at some point. He's 15 years old, and he's made it a mission to talk to as many World War II vets as he can. And he's got, like, it's become his life, and he's written bios on, you know, 30 or 40 of them at this point. And it's a pretty interesting guy. I mean, he remembers. I was just thinking of a Veterans Day parade, Liz, not that long ago on Fifth Avenue. It was raining, and it was recently enough where a B-1 bomber came over the city and shook the whole thing. It was kind of cool, pre 9/11. And the veterans in the back, I remember, were old World War I veterans that were still alive and had never left the hospital. And they had been in the hospital since 18 or 17. And boy, if you could, I think that would be great if you could check that.
I will.
That
would be my homework. Yeah.
And there is a World War I Centennial Commission in Washington. I met a woman from it the day after Election Day of 2016, and she mentioned it, but I haven't seen any product of it yet. I'm sure they're working hard to get it out there, but it's hard to break through this media environment. But I hope they do soon.
So, a lot has happened since our last conversation last Monday night. We were predicting that Kavanaugh would be confirmed, but then it was touch and go for a couple of days in there. But how are you feeling about how everything was resolved?
I think it was resolved the way it had to be. I mean, whether you believed Dr. Ford or not, and I kind of did, but there was no evidence, and it is a nation of laws and a nation of innocent until proven guilty. And I'm not backing away from my thought that she was compelling. But without evidence, it's very tough to do. I should mention we're going to be joined by a wonderful guest in a minute. And Morgan, are you on it already? No. Okay. So, Morgan is on. I had a feeling.
She's such a pro.
I heard a Manhattan car in the background, or Washington. I said, I think Morgan's on here. We are joined by one of our nearest and dearest friends, Morgan Ortagus, who many of you probably know from watching Fox News or CNN or other national programs. Morgan is one of my favorite people in the world. We met when Morgan was, I think you were 21, Morgan? I called you Florida because you had just come out of the South.
I think I was 20. I was 23, but not far off.
Not far off. So Morgan has an extensive resume with the Treasury Department. You're in the Naval Reserves. You're co-chair of Maverick PAC. You're a founder of Go Strategies. Is that right?
Go Advisors. Close.
Go Advisors. That's right. Yeah. Good Strategies is a burnt out word. So we'd love to know all about you, Morgan. Morgan Ortagus, tell us about yourself. Thank you for joining for Immediate Release, first of all.
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here. This is great. It's always good to do anything with you, Bill and Liz. Well, for those of you who do see me on Fox, let's see, I'll be on Outnumbered tomorrow, Tuesday, from 12 to noon. And I mostly try to talk national security, global affairs, that sort of thing. There's plenty going on in the world. I'm actually trying to write a piece tonight about the Iran sanctions that come into effect less than a month from now. We saw Secretary Pompeo in China today, and he and his counterpart traded harsh words. So, it's so interesting because we understandably get really caught up in the domestic side of the house as it relates to politics, especially Kavanaugh and that sort of thing. But there's so much that's going on around the world that I think doesn't make the headlines in the U.S. And I actually think for the last 2 years of this administration, there will be a very big focus as it relates to the international side of the House. And so for people like me who are global affairs nerds, this gets us quite excited.
I saw that headline. I'm actually anxious to see what your take is going to be. I look forward to reading that.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm still trying to figure it out, so maybe I'll break through my writer's block while on the podcast.
The nights are long. Yeah.
Morgan, what are your thoughts
exactly.
on the president's renegotiation of NAFTA?
Well, listen, I think it was a big win. Trade is one of the most arcane things that you will ever deal with in the U.S. government. So I've sat down and I think I've needed to have a few USTR negotiators explain to me at least 3 times the process of how we get from here to actually codifying this into U.S. law. So there are, we still face the hurdle of having to go through Congress. Clearly, it'll be a much easier win if he can retain both houses. If not, though, I'm not seeing this being a massive Democrat talking point against what is now the USMCA, and I think for good reason. This is not a deal that would be typically renegotiated by a Republican administration. The labor provisions are quite onerous, actually. On the Mexicans, you've made. I think that they have been pretty significant as it relates to dairy farmers and their treatment by the Canadians. But what's really more important is that this is a deal for a time that's much needed. I mean, when you look at the way the economy works now and how digital and the Internet of Things is changing everything, we had very, very lax IP, intellectual property protections in the last deal. We didn't really have any sort of provisions for a digital economy at all, because it was negotiated, 30 years ago. So I think having those are 2 massively big wins on the IP protection side and on the digital economy side. And I also think what's crucially important, which trade negotiators hate for good reason because it's so difficult to pull these deals together, is the provision that requires everyone to relook at these deals every 5 years. And as you can tell, people in the world of trade don't like to do that, right? We've had NAFTA on the books for several decades now. And so once we have the deals, we hate to revisit them because not only is it the American Congress that has to approve and to codify it in U.S. law, you have whatever host country is a part of the agreements also have to take it through their parliaments, et cetera, et cetera. But as painful as it is, I do think it's important that we continue to reevaluate the deals that we're in. So I don't know how much of this will be news going into 2018 in terms of a decisive factor for people voting. But I think if the president gets past the midterms and gears up for his reelection, he'll be able to point to this as one of the promises made, promises kept.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Morgan, to say that you're multifaceted is a huge understatement. I was just going through all the areas that you've been involved in. And the question I have is going to be one that's not even on your current resume. I mean, I know you're a national security analyst. You work in the banking world. You're a naval officer. I mean, you really do so many things. But I wanted to ask you a question because you have been.
I don't cook or clean, Bill.
You got Jonathan working, right?
Yeah, my poor husband can say, yeah,
I
was married for my brain, not for my domestic abilities.
But I wanted to ask you in your role, like you've worked so hard in Maverick PAC, which is not just it's Young Republicans, but you've worked so hard with women and with young women. And I know that you're an inspiration to a lot of young women. And, you've been on the board of, is it Miss America pageant you're on the board of or were for some time?
I was on the board of the Miss DC pageant.
Oh, which pageant was it? Sorry?
It's the Miss DC pageant. It was the
Miss DC. Yes.
If you win DC, then you go to Miss America.
Then you go to Miss America. I know you came up through that world, and then I know you worked. When you were in Afghanistan, I know you worked with young women there, and help with mentoring. But I'm very curious, and I think Liz is as well. And then I should shut up and let you guys talk about it mostly. I'm curious where you think, not just with Kavanaugh in particular, but where you see the situation with women in American politics today. Like we're at a really rough juncture. Right. It's like, and it's got to be rough to be, a conservative woman right now. I mean, it's, I just see people getting yelled at, and it doesn't really seem very cool to me. How do you
certainly
see,
in New York City?
What's it like being, I guess, a prominent and outspoken conservative woman in America right now, and in New York for that matter.
Well, Bill, I dealt at one point in my career, dealt in the world of counterterrorism. So I have pretty thick skin whenever it comes to the political game. There's not a lot that phases me. I will say that it's unique, especially when I look among like the subset of my girlfriends, because some of them who may have been like sort of center right, they are, they have turned very left and very anti-Trump. But at the same time, for every one of those girlfriends that I have, I have girlfriends who are very supportive of the president, and they may not have been initially. They may have been very skeptical in the campaign, but as it relates to the number of policies he's pursued, they have gotten on board. And so I've seen that time after time as well. I think what's happened, the state of American women is, we are not defined by our reproductive organs as it relates to how we vote. I mean, it drives me crazy how the media loves to paint women, especially during Kavanaugh, this is how all women feel. And I was actually on the train. I mean, I'm on the Acela too many times a week to count. I think they all know me there. And so I was on the Acela. I can't even remember if I was coming or going to D.C. I think I was going to D.C. And there was a guy that sat down next to me, and we sort of, exchanged a few remarks. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm getting ready to go on television and talk about Kavanaugh." And he said, "Well, just look at you and see who you are. You must hate him. You must be against this because you're, a young woman." And the last thing I wanted was to get on a fight on the Acela, about this.
In the quiet
part.
And
I said, "Well, no, yeah, exactly." Which is, I reminded myself why I sit in the quiet car. And I said to him, "Well, no, not really. But I actually don't want to talk about it." So anyway, I mean, listen, that's just one example of a story of how people in the media, write these stories with broad strokes about how women feel about Kavanaugh, or how about women feel about Trump, or how about women feel about the Republican Party. And actually, when you go into, a local chapter meeting of my organization where I co-chair the board, Maverick PAC, we have chapters around the country, people under 40 who are men, women, LGBTQ, veterans. We've got the first Muslim Republican to win a congressional primary in California. He's in the fight of his life trying to become the first Muslim Republican elected to Congress in California, Omar Kudrat. So we have, people like this. Exactly. And they don't get any media coverage. I had an event last week in New York, and again, MAPPAC, we have chapters around the country, but we're young donors. So we're people who are lawyers and bankers and finance and entrepreneurs who are donors. So it's a pretty sophisticated subset of people. We're working on we're close to having gender parity in our leadership. It's been a goal of ours for a long time. So, and I'm sorry, I know I could probably go on and on about this stuff. That's why I love podcasts. There's no one in my ear telling me to rap,
right?
Like there is on television.
Exactly. Yeah.
I say all that to say that, I think for me, and I said this on Special Report last Friday, is that Senator Collins really spoke for me. I felt like as it relates to the Kavanaugh hearings, because I had no desire to come out and trash Dr. Ford right away. In fact, I had said publicly that I felt very bad for her. Clearly, you don't put when you have children and you have a family, you don't put all of this stuff on the line for no reason. And so I went into her testimony. I was actually driving to Brooklyn because I needed to go onto a military base down there. And so I was listening to it in the car, and I saw some of it on television, and I really felt deeply for her. You could hear the pain in her voice, and I thought to myself, I'm not sure how Kavanaugh is going to do this, but I think I heard, Bill, right as you were dialing, you're saying, you can think that she is very credible. You can think she has a compelling story, but you could still believe in the fundamentals of what suggest and the presumed innocence. At any rate, I've got a little bit of an echo that's coming in, Bill. I'm sorry about that. Take my headphones out here.
Okay.
But I say all of that to say that, ultimately at the end of the day, Senator Collins' argument won the day for me. And that is where, I stood down, is that you did have a woman that had very credible testimony, a woman that I think we all empathized with. But, ultimately, as Senator Collins said that it did not meet. I believe the way she phrased it was sort of the benefit of the doubt is not how she worded it. I have to look up and see exactly how she phrased it. But she noted that she ultimately Kavanaugh and right. It wasn't a hearing, but people due process. People deserve to be heard, and Justice Kavanaugh deserved to be heard just as much as she did. So. And then I'm going to wrap this up because I know I'm talking too much, Liz, and you probably have a question. But something that bothered me that I said from the very beginning of all of this is that I saw that she was being used as a political football. So despite whether you ultimately believed her or you believed Kavanaugh's account or frankly, I come down on believing whatever the FBI report. And I said, if the FBI came back in their investigation and said, we need more time, we found some credible evidence here, I would have sided with the FBI and said, fantastic, we need to hear the FBI out. But when they came out with the report, and again, the public didn't see the full thing, but the summary and the versions that the public saw, it was clear that the FBI did not see a case, and therefore I stood by the FBI. So beyond all of our feelings, we have an institution that we is guarded with taking on these very difficult political tasks, and that institution spoke and did a report, and that was good enough for me.
Morgan, everything you've said, I agree with you 1,000%. And Billy and I have talked about this many times over the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's one of the things that bothers me the most about things like the protests against Susan Collins right now is that she's immediately labeled a traitor. That somehow her vote is a betrayal of all women, and she doesn't. The protesters don't speak for all women. I don't care how many women there are among those protesters. They don't speak for you and they don't speak for me. And I find more than in any other circumstance, this idea that women all have to stand together on all of these issues. It's really, it's offensive, and it frankly are marginalizing people who might actually support some of the things that you're saying, but they're forcing us. It's really a zero-sum game for a lot of those women, those angry women, and I don't know what we can do to change that. I don't know that we want to change it, but I appreciate your outspokenness on all of this because I do find that there are not enough conservative women in the media. And the positions of people like you and me are not represented adequate. Yeah. They're like I said, I think the word is betrayal. Somehow the rest of these women feel like you or me or Susan Collins are somehow abandoning the entire gender. It's shocking to me.
I couldn't agree more, Liz. And it's it has gotten so nasty. It's to the point that I have some very good friends that I just refuse to talk politics with at all. I don't even want to go there. I have taken their Facebook feeds or their Twitter feeds and limited it to where I can't see their, because it's just the constant ranting. That is just something for me that I don't want to see it from anyone in general. But I think it's made our relationships tricky. Family relationships, friend relationships. I can't believe to say this. We're in October as we start thinking, about the holidays. You start to look at people, it is the militancy of, if you don't believe this and you don't believe this way, then you're not for women. And that frustrates me more than anything because I'm someone, as Bill knows, I've spent time at the U.S. Embassy. I was in Saudi Arabia for a year and a half. I've spent time in Baghdad. I've spent time in Afghanistan on the board of the American University. I'm newly on the board of IRI's Women's Democracy Forum. So whether it's in the U.S. or whether it's abroad through IRI, I am helping women get elected abroad and both at the U.S. and abroad. But I'm helping women get in positions of power. I'm pushing women, in the corporate world. I love mentoring younger women who want to go into finance, who want to go into tech. So, just because I have a different, viewpoint as it relates to Justice Kavanaugh or President Trump or Senator Collins, therefore that I'm sort of out of this movement. And I will say, the other thing that's really taken me out of being able to participate in any of these modern day women's movement is the anti-Semitism that is rampant at these women's marches. And as a woman, I converted to the Jewish faith, I guess, probably, I don't know, 7 years ago, something like that, before I got married. And so, as a woman who stands, solidly behind my Jewish sisters, my sisters in Israel, I cannot tolerate the words and actions and anti-Semitism that you see in this movement. And it's become a very radical movement. I'm fine with women that were, this is democracy. I'm fine with women that were frustrated with the president and some of his actions and what he said during the campaign. Were frustrated that they worked for Hillary and that they lost, and that she lost, and therefore that they wanted to decide to protest. Okay, that's fine. Or that they wanted to, protest on behalf of all women. No problem with that. It's democracy. You get to do whatever you want to do. But what that turned to is something that's so nasty, something that I think that drives most common sense women away. And so really what we're seeing, is I think is we're entering a new era of politics. And, women should not be defined, as I always say, by our reproductive organs. We think differently. We have different opinions. We come from different walks of life. We're different in the boardroom. We're different in the classroom, and all of that's fine. But for me, don't pretend or don't accuse me of not being pro women and not being for women because I'm a conservative woman. In fact, everything that I've done my entire career is a testament to the opposite of that. I have certainly risked my own safety in numerous situations to help women around the world in the roughest places where they can possibly operate. I spoke in Kabul last year at a conference for women entrepreneurs. It certainly wasn't the safest place for me to go, but I would go back to Afghanistan tomorrow if needed to with the university. I'd go back to Iraq tomorrow. And I fundamentally believe in giving women a voice, whether it's in America or whether it's abroad. And so give me a voice as a conservative woman. And I think what we've really seen, and there's been editorials that have said this, that basically if there's a woman who supports Trump and his policies, basically, feminism, I should back up for a second. Feminism is supposed to be all-encompassing, right? At least in the past decade, feminism went through so many different iterations, and it turned off so many women, and there was a stereotype that if you were a woman, that you were a feminist, you couldn't get a husband, and you were going to be at home with your cat, right? So I think feminists saw that was a really bad stereotype, and they wanted to become more inclusive and bring all women into the fold. And there was a point, even at the beginning of the Me Too movement, Liz, where I really felt a part of it. I mean, Bill has known me since I was 23 years old, which was, just 2 years ago. But beyond that, Bill has seen when I've been in situations where, powerful men may have been gross to me, right, because they thought they could be. And I thought when the beginning of the Me Too movement, what a wonderful way for women like me and like Liz, who were trying to make it up the food chain of politics and business and in television, whatever it is, for us to know that powerful men cannot lord their power over us, and in order to try to make it, something that we have to go through in order to get up through the food chain of our career. And I was really happy, and I was really on board with other women about that. And I do have to say that, one of the things that I'm just so sad and somewhat angry to see what all of this evolved into is that this has turned into, and you could find plenty of op-eds in the left that say this, that Liz, that you and I, our voices don't count in the women's movement because we may be pro-Trump or we may be maybe you're not even pro him, I don't know, but maybe if you're pro some of his policies, they're still not supportive of that. And so I think conservative women, need to find our own voice and our own movement, because the women's marches, the anti-Semitic women's marches, are certainly not speaking for me.
No, and this accusation that you're standing with the white patriarchy, is really that's what this whole thing to me just kills me. And this started long before Trump. I mean, Billy can attest to this. Back in 2008, and I ran for the state Senate in New York. It was the women who were so angry that I was running as a Republican, and I was running as a Republican who was for sensible gun laws, pro stem cell research, not for overturning Roe v. Wade, for gay marriage, not even just civil unions, but for gay marriage, and it wasn't enough. It just none of it was enough, right, Billy? I mean, there was the idea.
It's never enough. Yeah.
It's never enough. And the idea that I would associate myself with the white male party was so offensive to. And back to your point about friends, I mean, to so many friends of mine, but just to women, period. It was stunning to me. So, I think Trump. It's convenient now to make it all about Trump. This false. You're either with Trump or you're with women. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of silly. But this anger, it scares me and it bothers me. And like I said, it's offensive. And you just laid out, all the work that you have done for a long time and will continue to do for women, not just here, but around the world, especially women who are oppressed in serious places, not just oppressed here on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
When I go to my Navy, when I go to my Navy Reserve drill this weekend, because I'm a reservist and I put on my uniform, I will remember that I am anti-woman as I go into my my male-dominated.
What have you done for women lately? Yeah.
You go to Florida.
Yeah. One of the things that you just hit on too, Liz, but I just want to, Liz, you mentioned the white patriarchy, and we're hearing all of this, and suddenly, white women have become, this vitriolic thing to the left. And the minute I started reading some of this rhetoric on Twitter, I thought, well, now who's really dividing people by race? I mean, that's the criticism that you constantly hear, that Trump is dividing people by race. But all I read from some of this far left criticism, on Twitter and in columns is, about white patriarchy, white this, white that, white women, it's your fault about Kavanaugh. And I thought, can we just stop dividing people among race, among gender? As I said earlier, I'm the first Muslim Republican to win a congressional primary in my PAC. I have several Black members of my PAC who are running as Republicans, for office. I've got John James, who's running for the Senate, African-American veteran. So if we could just stop determining, and I have another friend, New York, Ashton Randall, you guys may know him, openly gay man, Republican, running for the state Senate in New York. All of these people are members of my PAC, and to call this the white patriarchy whenever I've got a Muslim and several African American people, LGBTQ, etc., running for office, just like stop putting us in the box that you have us in.
Yeah. By the way, I think you were both citing a piece that was in the New York Times a couple of days ago by Alexis Grinnell, who is actually a dear friend of mine. She's on the left, and she very much believes in her position. She's going to be on next week to talk about that piece. But she wrote about the white patriarchy that you're talking about, and kind of white women's privilege and the rest of it. And so we're gonna have a nice talk with Alexis, and there'll be some disagreement, but we're gonna certainly try and keep it cool. I was saying to my wife earlier this evening. We have a daughter in college right now, and all the classes have to do, like, if you don't take economics anymore, you take like the racism of economics, or the economics of racism, or
really? Seriously?
Everything is attached to, like,
economic inequality. Yeah.
The biology of the man versus the ethnocentric cultures of the South American. It's like, stop it. And so I said, you don't, like, this whole obsession with race and gender and in categories and kind of the tribalism. It's not what we learned. And she looked at me surprised and said, well, what did you there when you were younger? Like there was no other perspective. Not that she's completely brainwashed, but she hasn't heard anything else. It's just that everything is about categorizing people, and it's no longer about individuals or about universal ideas. I mean, it's just not taught like it used to be. It really depresses me to see it, but that's not new. That's been going on. But continue. I mean, you guys are, like, I can't imagine what it's like to have to fly the banner very publicly as a conservative woman these days. And you're describing some of it, both of you. I mean, Liz, was it like that? in Reagan Bush days, I mean, it wasn't much easier. I mean, everyone was getting yelled at then too. It seems now there's the internet that amplifies it.
There's no question that's a big part of the problem here, for sure. It's interesting. I think so many things have gotten conflated now. Me Too being conflated with Kavanaugh, those are two entirely separate situations. Me Too movement is about abuse of power, goes well beyond politics, right? There's a power in every single industry now. We've seen a titan taken down, right? Harvey Weinstein, Les Moonves, we're waiting for some Wall Street folks, but certainly in politics. But, and then there's Dr. Ford, who had some very, a credible testimony that there isn't a woman I've talked to who didn't think that what she had to say was compelling, believable to the extent that something obviously happened to her. But Morgan just laid out exactly what Susan Collins said, which was when you really listen to all of it, the facts weren't there to back it up. And even saying that right now, Billy, there are women out there screaming that means I don't support the Me Too movement, as if those two things have anything to do with each other. So every single issue now is looked at through this lens of almost, pure. You have to be a purist with your, you're either for women or against them. And it's doing a terrible disservice to everybody all around, and certainly to these white men who Morgan and I are accused of defending.
And there will be backlash. Morgan, we promised to let you go at some point to get into your column. I just was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about Go Advisors before you go. We'd love to hear what you're up to there.
Oh, and we're going to play our little game, Billy. We're not going to let it go before we do our candidates. we have a quiz for you.
Well, speaking of bipartisanship, Go Advisors actually has it. So I founded Go Advisors with one of my best friends and former colleague, Samantha Vinograd, who some of you may know from CNN. She's a national security analyst for CNN, and she was, we met in Baghdad 11 years ago, but she was also one of the senior advisors to President Obama in his first term, advisor to Hillary Clinton. So yes, an Obama, and Hillary Clinton advisor and a Bush Trump, Republican have gotten together to do business. And I will say that it's interesting because we've been friends for so long that I never, and colleagues really, and I never thought of Sam as my Democrat friend. I just thought of her as my friend. And we started last year speaking together before the election on a few college campuses, talking about Democrats and Republicans and talking about foreign policy and what it was like to be young women working in Baghdad together. And the message just really hit, and it really resonated with people. So I think it's a sad commentary that we're one of the few bipartisan shops around there. But we are. I mean, listen, most of the work that we do is not really politically related. It's focused on geopolitics and helping businesses grow and expand and understand the policy and regulatory environment for their business strategy. So that is Go Advisors. It's global-op.com. And I, would love to all of your viewers to send me some business.
It is a dynamite team. I mean, Morgan, I've known your talents for years, and Sam spoke at a conference I was involved with in Washington a few months ago, and she was just fantastic. What a combination! Talk about just a dynamic duo. That is. Could you hit us with the website one more time before I engage you in this game? This game of a minefield of candidate names. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's global-op.com.
Global-op.com. Terrific. So so I'm gonna go ahead, Liz.
Oh, guys, one other question before we do Billy's game. Morgan, I don't know if you saw today that Bill and Hillary Clinton announced that they're going to be going on tour. Live Nation is actually sponsoring a tour that they're going to do. I think they're calling it Evening Conversations with, it's an evening with the Clintons across the country, starting right after the election and through the spring, I guess through most of next year. Big arenas like Las Vegas and Montreal and Detroit and other places. I wonder what you think about that, and if you think it's going to be helpful to the party as they go into the Democratic Party as they go into 2020, or if you think that the younger folks would actually prefer to see more sort of forward thinking and forward looking standard bearers of the party.
Yeah. Do you guys know the GIF? However, does anyone ever determine if it's GIF or GIF? By the way.
No, but that sounds like something.
No one has ever determined that.
Okay. Have you ever seen the GIF of the camel eating the popcorn?
No.
You know which one I'm talking about? Okay, anyway, it's a really funny one. So that's basically going to be me during the 2020 primary on the Democratic side, because it's going to be
a good segue.
Such a mess. I have been telling people for the past 6 months, everyone at Fox rolls their eyes at me and says it's not going to happen, that Hillary Clinton would like to run again. She wants a redo. She wants to claim the 80,000 votes that turned the Electoral College for Trump. Actually, it should have been her, should have had it. I don't know whether she will be successful in her primary. I'm probably not the best person to analyze the Democrat Party. But I think that this tour that she and Bill Clinton are going on is part of her effort to try to say that I need to have a comeback, that I need a rematch against them. It's really going to be a rematch. And people think I'm crazy for saying it, but you heard it here first if she announces her re-election. But I think that I don't think this is going to go well, because as we saw, do you remember whenever Bill Clinton came out with the fiction book? It was earlier this year. And he went on tour to promote the
James
book of
Patterson.
fiction.
That's right.
That's right, with James Patterson. So on that tour, he kept getting hit with all of these Me Too questions and on all of these things. And even Alyssa Milano was asked, I believe it was on CNN last week, about, how can you sort of be against these accusations against Kavanaugh in high school whenever Bill Clinton has worse allegations, rape allegations, et cetera, as an adult. And she basically said, we should have taken this more seriously. She's the leader of the Me Too movement in the Democrat Party. So I think it's interesting based off how poorly Bill Clinton's fictional book tour went, that the two of them are going on together, because I think they're going to get hammered. I really do think they're going to get hammered.
Morgan, I could not agree with you more. I think Bill Clinton's legacy is garbage. I think there was a time after his presidency where he was the most, popular former president, even former elected official in America. And I think Me Too caught up with him. And no matter how many years have gone by, his legacy is shot. I think he's forever marred with that, as he should be. And I agree. If they go on tour, she's going to pay the price for that again.
I think that's right. And it's also going on tour at the same time that Michelle Obama's on tour, with her own book. And also, President Obama is out campaigning now for candidates, and I'm sure he'll continue to do that next year. I find the juxtaposition actually odd and risky, because I think from a legacy standpoint, you're both right.
Okay, so Morgan, so you can get to writing your geopolitical stuff. And I'm going to go through 17 Democratic candidates very quickly.
Oh,
and then I'm going to have each of you, if each of you could say like 1, 2, or 3 words about each one, just your gut take on what you think, and you could always pass if you think you may get in trouble. No problem. Okay, we're going to start with Morgan. Joe Biden.
Grandpa.
Liz.
Yeah, yesterday's news.
Okay, we'll go Liz. Bernie Sanders.
Old. Stale.
Full stop. Yeah.
Stale.
Morgan. Bernie Sanders.
What's his name from the? This is driving me crazy. From Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's what I was trying to think of.
Larry David.
Larry David.
Yeah. Larry David.
Better. He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
Okay, Morgan. Elizabeth Warren.
Like cranky math teacher.
Yeah. Angry. Her slogan is "I'm angry and I own it." What kind of a bumper sticker is that?
No, that's not really her slogan, is it?
Well, it is. Every speech she's given now, she shakes her fists and she screams, and I mean screams, "I'm angry and I own it."
And then she goes into a war whoop.
Tyro. Yeah, then she just yeah.
Sorry. Okay, Liz. Hillary Clinton.
Oh, I think I just said it. Yeah.
I think we covered Hillary. Yeah.
Yep,
so
we did.
We'll go. Let's go right to Kamala Harris. Liz.
She is smart and sassy.
Okay, Morgan. Kamala Harris.
Compelling. I think she's good. She thinks she's good.
We're going to stick with you, Morgan, with Oprah Winfrey. Any chance she runs?
Oh, my God. I no. BS.
Liz?
I mean, she's not BS. I like Oprah, but her running,
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
You're on the record saying, she's not BS. Liz?
No, I like her. I like Oprah.
She's the happy warrior.
She is. Everyone likes Oprah. Liz, how about Cory Booker?
Yeah.
Oh, Spartacus? He's the Newark preacher. He's a preacher.
How about you, Morgan, with Cory Booker?
John Edwards.
Ooh, that's good.
That is good. I'm to put a flag in that.
Morgan, we're going to stick with you and Morgan, Eric Holder.
I mean, he's like a mafia lawyer.
Yeah. Liz?
Well, Fast and Furious.
Okay, Liz, Kirsten Gillibrand, Liz.
Oh, she is, hold on. You go first, Morgan. I got a lot of things to say about her. She is.
Well, I would preface anything I say by saying that I am grateful for what she did for women in the military as it relates to, she really took on these rape cases.
Sexual assault.
And a lot of that stuff. And sexual assault, And so I am very grateful for her to what she did. But, she just looks like she's running for high school class president.
She's an opportunist.
And this contest gives great leniency towards the 3-word rule.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's absolutely permissible.
She's an opportunist.
Okay, class president. That's mine.
Okay, Morgan, Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, I wanted that one.
Okay, let Liz go first. Liz go first. I got to think.
He's a corrupt fraud. He's really a corrupt fraud.
It's hard to beat that. Yeah, and he did not come across well in those debates.
Okay, so
I went over 3 words. Sorry, corrupt fraud.
Right.
I'm with Liz.
Now they have this. I don't know why they have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in this category, but maybe they just threw him in there as an independent. The Rock. How do you guys feel about The Rock? Morgan.
He's hot.
Ortega says he's hot, and Liz.
Yeah, I can't beat that.
The Rock's awesome. How about Terry McAuliffe, Liz?
Oh, he's just a political operative. I know he was the governor, but I can't take it seriously.
Morgan McAuliffe, anything there?
No, like moderate Marvin.
And okay, how about Mark Cuban, Morgan?
Showbiz.
Liz?
Yeah, he's Trump light.
Okay, and then I'm going to read the next 4 all together and see if any one of them pops because they're kind of non-electeds. Tom Steyer, Howard Schultz from Starbucks, John Delaney, or Steve Bullock. Any one of those get any traction?
Well, Steve Bullock.
Well, I don't know the left. Go ahead.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't know Steve Bullock.
Steve Bullock's the governor of Montana, and he's the guy who a lot of people are saying he's a sleeper to keep our eyes on. And Mitch Landrieu, too, but Steve Bullock for sure. And I don't know anything about him, but his name keeps coming up.
Yep. Howard Schultz or Tom Steyer? I guess they both have.
Howard Schultz I met. Yeah, Howard Schultz I met so he's the founder of Starbucks.
Right.
I met him at the Atlantic Council Gala in May in D.C., and he spoke. And he was very, very compelling. But, here's the problem. Okay, I've gone way beyond the 3 words, so I'm just going to say it. Is these CEOs, who I think, could theoretically make fantastic candidates, have looked at President Trump and said, well, I can do that, and I'm a real CEO, XYZ. And what they don't, they don't realize that, A, they're going to get handicapped by the far left in these primaries, and they're going to find the first thing I would do if I was running against the founder of Starbucks is what's your minimum wage? If you're not paying people $15 an hour, Bernie Sanders is going to get you. Yeah. And I don't think that they were good CEOs, but they don't. Trump understood politics, right? He understood how to appeal to people. He understood who the forgotten person was. And there will be, I think, probably a compelling Democrat who rises, from the bunch and becomes the nominee who understands that. But I don't see it being these CEOs as much as I'd like it to be one of the CEOs.
Yeah.
No, I think that you just framed that perfectly, because the outsider argument it doesn't stand on its own. You've got to have Trump had uniquely his political skills are unique. But speaking of, what about Bloomberg, Billy? Let's ask you. And maybe if Morgan has to go, we'll let her go. But Mike Bloomberg is really he's not even a wild card. I mean, we know he's the real deal. He's got the money. He certainly could get organized a 50-state strategy. What do you think his chances would be?
Why don't we ask Morgan, and then Morgan will let you go with that question so you can start writing it. Okay. Mike Bloomberg. I mean, you know Bloomberg well, and you've worked with in New York while we were both working in New York. We work with a lot of his team. Any chance there?
I mean, I thought he was a good mayor. I like Bloomberg. I don't think he ultimately runs. I really don't.
Yep, I think it's an honest take. That's he's talked about it a few times. I mean, the rumor is he's really looking at it this time, but wants to do it as a Democrat. And it's really tough to break into that field unless he just, dropped $1 billion on the table and said, I'm running. But even that's tough. Even that's hard.
Even that's tough. It's going to be tough to break through this crowd.
Morgan, can we have you back sometime? It's just been so good to have you on here.
And I love seeing you on
TV. Too much.
Oh, this is why we had you. And I think you're really, I watch on Fox Business all the time. Thank you.
Well, I'll be on Fox tomorrow on Outnumbered, and Fox Business 6 to 9 a.m. Thursday on Mornings with Maria.
Oh, right. She's the best. Okay, perfect.
And one of these years you'll get some sleep. Yeah. I don't know when.
Yeah, not today.
on the flight to Kabul.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All
Morgan,
right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Morgan. Thanks, Morgan Ortegas. Thank you so much.
And thanks for your great service, Morgan. Really.
Anytime. It's an honor. Bye.
Bye, Morgan. Thanks. She is dynamite. I just love her to death. Yep.
She is. No,
Morgan grew up in the Orange Groves of Florida and has just taken on the world by storm. And talk about, she just lights people up. She lights up a room and is so positive and just does things. She just gets involved in so many things and succeeds at them all. Pretty amazing, real talent.
But she has not been a candidate herself.
She's not. I've talked to her about it a number of times over the years, and I think maybe one day she might be interested. But I think she wants to do so many things first. And, I think she realizes that once you're a candidate, everybody sees every move you make through that prism. And to some extent, you're limited in what you do. Everybody's suspicious that it's for a political reason. I think she genuinely wants to go out and do stuff first, which is smart. I think that's great. But I'd love to see her in the Senate someday, in the U.S. Senate.
Right. You know who else who's distinguished herself? So, Fran Townsend. I don't know how you feel about her, but I think she's exceptional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, she is.
She's another one.
No question. Yeah, no question at all. But I'd love to see Morgan run, and Morgan has an identical twin sister, Megan, and they both sing opera also, which is just crazy. And so one of them should run. They were both in Baghdad for a while, but I think Morgan is probably more likely to run. I would guess she seems to be maybe the more political, but it's just so good to have her on. Bill, I
want to get to something you mentioned to me earlier before we go. You said you saw some stats today that said that CNN surpassed Fox in their online news subscriptions, or what was the deal?
Yeah, it was just readership? A little bit. It was a little bitty on Drudge, and it's one of those anecdotal things that when we're working on races and consultants are looking for kind of bellwethers of what's going on in the country. We're looking for little indicators. I mean, everyone has talked about the blue wave, and certainly in the Northeast where I am, the blue wave has already hit in a lot of different ways, and we're certainly concerned about it. For 28 days from now, and there's some discussion post Kavanaugh on whether Republicans have been fired up to turn out in big numbers as well. But in this little bit. CNN outranked Fox in online views, and that was very concerning for me because Fox was really kind of kicking butt in that category for month after month after month. And the fact that CNN beat them, it probably was the Kavanaugh.
I was going to ask that.
The Kavanaugh hearings.
Yeah,
but that's significant. That's significant. It is. People were going into Kavanaugh, and if they were going into CNN rather than Fox, it would tell me that they were not happy about the Kavanaugh situation. And so I think that's a little bellwether that I'm watching for. I think that's of concern. And I do think it's going to be really. I think the turnout among Democrats in in blue states, high Democratic states, is going to be enormous. And I think it's going to be a real challenge for Republicans to turn their numbers out to face that. We'll see. It could be just an outlier that means nothing, but I'm keeping an eye on it.
Well, and this has been the debate around the water cooler for the last couple of days, which is this, the enthusiasm gap obviously closed a lot over the last 6 weeks for Republicans with the Kavanaugh hearings, or the last month, I should say. But is it really sustainable? I mean, or are the Republicans now going to feel satisfied that they got their guy in, and they're going to stay home as opposed to fighting, having to continue to fight the fight? Or does it get everyone riled up enough and scared enough to think what would happen if the tides turned, or actually if the House and the Senate turn? And so I think most people agree that the House is probably gone, but the Senate certainly isn't gone yet. But if the Democrats turn out the way you're talking about, things could really change dramatically.
Yeah, I think, and that's the question that with 28 days to go before the election. 28 days could be 28 years in politics. And the Republicans did get their win. So to some extent, you'd say Republicans are happy with the brand. They're happy with Trump, either as the administration drove through a second Supreme Court judge, which is a very big deal. And so maybe that buzz lasts until November 6th, but maybe it wears out in the meantime because they got their win. Well, and so we just don't know. We know the Democrats are coming out, no question. And
you put aside the Supreme Court for a second. Is the Trump economy enough for these Republicans to turn out? And I don't know the answer to that. The tax bill seems like it was 20 years ago, even though we're still reaping the benefits of it. The tax reform, but and the unemployment, as low as it's been in decades. But I just don't know that that's going to get everybody out to vote.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, good talking to everybody again tonight. Thank you for coming, for listening.
Thanks, Bill. Yep, good. Great. Good night, everybody.
Talk to you all next week. Okay.
But now, wait a minute. I'm talking about America, sweet America.